Again, my name is Sean, and today we're just going to be going over some shortcuts, tricks, and tips for working in CorelDRAW and using the Design Wizard. So first off, does anyone know, or has anyone changed their save settings since they started working in CorelDRAW? Awesome. So we got one person. Okay, so that's whenever you first get Corel, that's what I always recommend for everyone. So there's a few ways you can get to your settings. One way you can do it is just go to your layout and page setup, and then this will open your workspace too. It'll give you your options. You'll see workspace right here. When I click that arrow, it'll drop down even more options for us. So the first thing we want to do is when we start working with Corel or the Design Wizard is our save feature. So right here you'll see save. Right now it generally it's going to be backed up every 20 minutes. So we always want to change that to 5. That way, if you're ever working in Corel, if you're new to it, Corel can, if you overwork it, can crash. If you're experienced with Corel, you'll probably run into that before where you're working on design, all of a sudden you might hit a wrong button, a wrong command, and it kind of errors out Corel and it crashes. So when it does that, if you have this set at 5 minutes, it's more likely that it's going to capture most of your design or whatever you're working on and bring you to that step. So if it's at 20 minutes and you crashed at 17, well, all that work you just did won't be saved. So right underneath that, you have a temporary folder, so you can see where all those files go. If you'd like to make it a specific folder, you can hit browse and then choose any folder that you work out of. So does anyone have any questions about saving? Alrighty, so we'll keep going. Again, if you guys have any questions or want to see anything in particular, you want to know what a certain button does, you can shout that out as well, and I can cover that for you too. So with Corel, I'm not going to go over all the tools today. We have an overview of Corel coming up next week, so that will dive more into all the different features of Corel. But I want to show you some of the tools that you can use and some of the shortcuts and some of the tricks you can use when you use some of these tools that are already here. So the first ones we're going to go through are the shapes. So any of these shapes that we use, so let's just bring out a rectangle. So if I just draw a regular rectangle, I can kind of control the size and the width. Now if you want to make this a perfect square, you can hold control and that will make it a perfect square when we're drawing these shapes. Now that goes for any of these shapes. So with the ellipse tool, if you want to draw like an oval, you don't have to hold anything, you can just click and make that shape. If you wanted a perfect circle, you can just hold control and it will always make it that perfect circle. So again, any of the shapes that we have, so you'll see down here the star, we have more basic shapes up here. So we have our heart, our lightning bolt, stuff like that. So if you want a perfect heart, all you have to do is hold control. If you don't, you can make it stretched, you can make it, whatever kind of shape you want. But by holding control, it's going to make that a perfect shape every time. So with our shapes, some of the shapes that we use, such as the star, when we make these, you'll see sometimes like extra items will appear here, kind of like buttons will pop up. So if I don't have the star selected, you won't see any of those here. But when you select the star, it will give us more options on top of the toolbar. So if we wanted a 6-pointed star, I could just go one up and it'll make a 6-pointed star, or 7, 8. So whatever kind of star you're looking for, maybe you just wanted a 4, you can do that as well. So some of these shapes will allow you to change them up once you create them. So here you have the sharpness of the angle. So if we make this really low, you can see how that changes the shape of the star as well. So if we make it really high, you can see how that brings in that the corners or the angles a lot more deeper. Right, so there's all these little tools once you actually create some of these shapes that you can edit even more. So just be aware of those. Not every shape is going to have anything or have everything, but you can see that, you know, some of these, the circle will have its few, the rectangle, you can change the corners. In the heart, you're not going to have too many options with this, but you'll see here where the heart is if you want another basic shape, you can go through there, and whatever the last shape you use, you'll see that image right at the top. So if you're working in an older version of Corel, it might be a little bit different when you go to the polygon shape. Sometimes I know they combined a lot of the shapes into the polygon now. So if you're working on like an older version of Corel, you should still see most of these. They just might be in like a different area right here. All right. So next thing we're going to be going through is the guideline. So on Corel, you'll always see that you have these rulers almost on the side, the left and top of your Corel workspace. So with these rulers, if you're creating designs and you're having trouble lining up, you can actually click and drag and pull guidelines out. And this might help you, you know, if you're lining up a certain design or anything like that, we can use these guidelines to help us line it up. Maybe we're working with a sticky block font, so let me go ahead and draw that out for us. So we'll have TRW. So if we had all these created, and maybe, you know, they weren't, right now they're pretty much lined up as is, but if they weren't, or if you had to pull the whole alphabet and pick and choose letters, we can manually lock these onto the tool or to the guide. So once we pull these guides out, again, it's just clicking and dragging down from these rulers. If we go to view, view, you'll see snap to down here. So again, it might be a little bit different if you're in a previous version of Corel. The snap to might be in a different, it should still be under view, but it might be in a little different location. We're gonna make sure guidelines are checked. So these are actually called guidelines. So when you pull these out, now because we chose the snap to, once we put one of these objects up to one of these lines, let me zoom in a little so we can see it a little better. You'll see that like dark blue line come up on each side. So on the left and bottom, you'll see that it's kind of like a thicker blue line, and that's letting us know that it's snapping to that guideline. So it's as close as it can be to that guideline. So if I wanted to line up a few things, I could bring my T on this side, and then if I wanted my R next, I could just bring that right down to this corner, and now that's going to snap those and put them right next to each other. Then I can drag this over here, and now you can see it's on the bottom and the right hand side, and then I could pull my W over and then just snap that right into place too. So that's just one of the reasons you'll use the guidelines. They're definitely very helpful for lining, if you're having trouble lining anything up or anything like that, you can have those. Now on our wizard, you'll see guides under the edit tab. So if you're working with a design and you want to keep something in line with it, you can click on one of these buttons. So this one here will add guides to the left and right. This one will add guides to the top and bottom. And this will add guides to the center. So these are already here for you. So instead of, you know, you trying to come down here and making sure that that line's nicely on that side, if you just select your object and click whatever, you know, if you want the guides on the top and bottom, all you have to do is that, and it'll manually put those there for you. So obviously we have all these guides on here now. Instead of manually going through and selecting one and hitting delete on each one, this little X will delete all my guidelines on that page. So it just cleans it up really quick for us. Alright, so the next tool we're going to use is the Smart Fill, and again this is just a Corel based tool. Now, has anyone used the Smart Fill tool before? Alright, so it seems like most of us haven't. So the Smart Fill is up there on one of my favorite Corel tools. It makes it really easy to take certain parts of your design and just kind of snag it. So one example is, obviously we have this heart here. Now, if I wanted just a quick copy, or if I just wanted to fill this heart, I can just grab my Smart Fill, click inside that object, and that will just fill that shape for me. So obviously this is already a vector. If I wanted another heart, I could just make a quick copy, and it's essentially the same thing. But when we're working in a design, let's say we have one of our magic patterns, and let's add a little pause to that. So this is just our magic pattern, and it's got these paws in it. Now all I want is a paw, but this is, let me put a background on it. So whatever our background is going to show through. So we have our black background, so this isn't actually an object, it's just an area that's filled at kind of just like an empty space. So the Smart Fill, we can use this to fill that area, and since it's all enclosed, it's going to just fill that one area. So now I can go through here, and just from this magic pattern, now I've created my own paw vector that I can use in any design going forward if I wanted to create it, with the design I had here. Now the Smart Fill allows us to pull those objects out and use them for a different design. So let me give you guys another example too of how the Smart Fill works, and how sometimes you have to be careful of what you actually are trying to snag or make sure the object's closed. So draw another box, and we have our basketball vector here. So this is our women's basketball magic pattern. Drew it a little bit big, so it's just going through it real quick. Alright, so let me change the color. So now we have this object, and we can see here we have a lot of different areas. So we have two basketball girls that we could fill, and a basketball that we could essentially just use the Smart Fill and steal this, create our own vector from this design. So you can see, because this area isn't closed off, it has a little opening, it's going to fill the entire object. So this isn't actually closed off, so that's why it filled all three of those at once. If I just click on this one, it's only going to fill this area because everything else is closed off. So same with this last piece here, all three of those are actually touching, so it's going to fill all three of those objects rather than just the one. Now, same with this design here, it actually is open if I zoom in. So if I tried to fill this right now, let's go ahead and do it. If you try to fill an object that has an opening in it, it's actually, well, that one, oh, I guess that was closed off. Let's see if this one is. So someone asked, are the magic patterns sold in an art pack? Yeah, and I can show you guys that at the end. So you can purchase individual designs or magic patterns, or we have our artwork pack that contains a lot of them. So you can buy individual ones. We have, so down here you'll see we have Christmas, or we have a holiday pack, so it'll come with 5 or 6 magic patterns. We have sports themed ones. We have the Jesus themed one here with the crosses and the fish. basketball. So you'll get about 5 or 6 in each pack, or you can buy the entire artwork pack and it comes with a lot more. Alright, so I'm going to accidentally do this on purpose. So if you're using the smart fill and you accidentally click into an open area, so kind of like the white background, it's going to take a while, but it's going to actually fill everything around it as a smart fill. So you can see my objects now, everything is just filled with the green smart fill. So if you get an error like this, it just means that whatever you just tried to fill is open to the entire page pretty much. So it's not enclosed correctly. So if you just go back and try to close it up, it should work. So with someone asked, great question. On our basketball, we have this black line. So when we use the smart fill, any object we fill, I'm just going to do this one as well. So you'll see that like black outline around my line. So even though that black outline's there, it's actually not gonna read as like a 2-color vinyl or anything like that. It's just showing you the outline of your design. So to get rid of that black line, if any color palette, you should have this top box right here that has like an X going through it, and same with here on our wizard. So you can see left click clear fill, right click clear outline. So if I right click this X, it will get rid of that outline for me. Because even though it's there, it's not actually gonna like cut as a 2-color outline or 2-color design or anything like that. So you definitely want to, when I create my designs, I try to get rid of those outlines because it helps see the image a little bit better. So again, it's just right clicking that X. And this object here, if I left click it, it looks like it's gone, but it's actually still there. So it's just making that clear too. So essentially, if you right click any of these colors, it will add that color to your outline. And if I left click it, it'll fill that object. So right click on a color changes the outline, where a left click changes the fill. But again, even though that you change the outline color, it's not actually going to read it as an object. So it's essentially, it looks like that. It's not going to read any outline that's there. So just keep that in mind when you send that to the cutter. So if someone asked if you wanted to make it a 2-color, could you? So yes, if we change this color right here, you'll see the hairline. And let's see if we just make that a little bit bigger. And once I do that, you'll have this button here, convert outline to object. So once I did that, it should, yep. So now the black is one object and the brown is one object. Yeah, so let me go back a few steps. So right now, you'll see we have a black outline. Even though it's there, it's not technically there. Even though you see it, it's not going to cut. If I go to wireframe, it just looks like one piece. So let me pull this away just so we can see a little bit better. That's our wireframe look. When I go back to enhance, it looks like a 2-color design, but it's actually just the one. So to get that as an outline, right here, when I click on it, you'll see that this hairline, this little pen, is our outline width. So if you want to make that larger, let's just make it 1. Nothing crazy. Well, when I go to my wireframe, it's still showing up just as that single cut. So you can make the outline as big as you want, but if you don't convert it to an object, it's never going to show up on when you send it to the cutter. So right now we see it. If I click this button right here, convert outline to object, now when I go to my wireframe, there's 2 different objects there. So does anyone have any questions about the wireframe, the outline? Great question. So we'll keep on moving. So something like this, where I filled this girl in here, you can see that it left it a little bit open and was connected to this L. So obviously we don't want our vector to have this L hanging out. So yeah, I could probably go back and, start deleting these nodes and try to really, fix that area up. And it's not too much of a problem. But what we can also do is close this gap. So with the smart fill, you can kind of trick it into thinking it's a closed object even when it's not. So if I just take my B-spline and I just draw a line, just pretty much to fill that outline right there, I'm just kind of closing that gap. Now if I use my smart fill, that line I just drew there should block it and it won't fill that L anymore. So you see how that's not filled? Just because I drew that line with my B-spline, it closes that off, and now I don't have to worry about going back and editing anything. So the last Corel tool I want to show you guys is the interactive fill tool. So right above the smart fill, you have the interactive fill tool. Now this is just for mockups. Now with our wizard, all the glitter, neons, holographic, vinyl, any vinyl we carry, we pretty much have already listed as an option here. So right now, it'll always pretty much start in the EasyWeed colors. If you want to use a glitter, a fashion, so our Shemika colors are here. So if I wanted a polka dot design, I can make it a polka dot design. If I wanted a zebra stripe, it's nice because it actually shows this for our customers, what it's going to look like without you, wasting material or anything like that. However, sometimes when we use some of these colors, it kind of has like a distorted look. It's not that clean. So that's when we can use the interactive fill tool. So if I click on this, once I have my object selected, it's going to have this little box around it. And once I make that box smaller, you can see how it changes how clear the glitter looks. So right now it's kind of distorted. If I make it a little bit smaller, you can see how it starts making this glitter look a little bit nicer. And you can also rotate it, so the glitter might look different by rotating it. And again, if you make it really small, larger, depending on what type of look you're going for, you can change that up and just make it a little bit nicer when you present it to your customers. So if you ever are working on design, you're like, oh, why is this glitter just not looking that good? Something like this purple, if I just use the interactive fill tool, this will help make it actually look a little more like a glitter HTV rather than something like that where it's all distorted. So sometimes when you click on it, you'll see a box that's like really large like that. So obviously we don't want to send a design until it's a glitter and it looks like that. So if we just bring that box in, usually the smaller we make it, the better it looks. But you don't want to go too small at the same time because then it'll look, it's not going to actually have that glitter look. So play around with the interactive fill tool. I said it was only for mockups. It's not. It's more of just the reason I said it's for mockups. It doesn't necessarily just have to be for mockups, but when you do this with, it's not going to affect your wireframe settings or your cutter settings or anything like that. So if you think it looks better and you just want to have it that way, you can. But by me changing around the interactive fill, it's not going to do anything to my wireframe, anything like that. So when we show this to our customer, we just want it to look as good as it can. So that's why I said it's mostly for mockups. Otherwise, when we send it to a cutter or when we save it, we want to have like basic colors. So either from any of these EasyWeed colors or something like that. The reason I wouldn't recommend saving in a glitter or anything like that is because if I make both of these the same color glitter, so I'll make them both silver. Well, even though they're technically the same color, if I go to select all the same color, it won't grab anything else. So it just kind of doesn't even recognize this and this as the same silver glitter. So it's very hard to work with. Now if I make both of these orange, now if I wanted all the orange, I could select all the same color and it'll grab both of those together. So that's why, yeah, so exactly, Dax, you want a high quality image for your customers, so that's what the interactive fill tool can help you, give them. For your preference, you kind of probably just want to keep it in flat colors like this when you're saving it, but otherwise, you can use the interactive fill tool for that. Alrighty, so that pretty much covers the Corel side of it. Does anyone have any questions or want to see anything again before we get into the wizard? Alright, so if someone had a good question, how do you make a magic pattern look smaller? So depending on the shape you have, now right here, this one's about 8 inches. Yes, and this is being recorded, so if you guys, want to see anything again, it will be recorded, so you can always go back that way too. Now with this, we have two objects, obviously the same. I just made this one 16 inches, and this one is 8, so about half its size. Now with the magic patterns, the way these work is the bigger the object is to start out with, the more of the design you'll see. So let's just pick one of our football ones. So we'll do our big one first. So you'll see that it comes in with a lot of different footballs in here. Now if I do the same pattern with our smaller heart, you'll see that it can only fit so many footballs in there. So if you want different looks, if I made the same heart even smaller, it's only going to fit like 4 on there. So depending on how much of the magic pattern you want in your design, you'll have to you'll size it first and then add the magic pattern. So now at the end, if I make all these the same size, so we'll make them all 8 inches, you can see all the different kind of looks you can get because of just adding or just by enlarging it first or making it smaller. So all those are technically the same magic patterns, but to get different looks with them, you'll just make them very large or very small to begin with and then add that pattern, and then you'll get different looks like that. So again, this is the larger look, you're going to fill more in. So something like this, if I make it 8 inches and I have all these footballs, it might be a little bit difficult. This one's probably not too bad just because it's pretty basic lines. It's not too intricate. If I had something a little bit more intricate and it was this small, it's definitely going to be a little bit harder to weed. So that's why you'll probably want to go with something like this, your middle one, because the footballs are still large enough where you won't have a trouble weeding. And not to mention, the difficult thing about this is just weeding all those out. It's just going to be a lot more time. There's probably, double to triple amount of footballs in this design than we have in the middle. So that's going to be your real, what's going to cause you the most or spend the most time weeding. It's not going to be necessarily difficult with the design we used here, but it's going to be, time-wise, it's definitely going to be a lot longer with this design rather than one of these two. And one thing I always like to do with these magic patterns too, since we're talking about them, is if you just copy and paste, so I have two hearts right on top of each other, and I'll make it just a little bit bigger. So I'm just taking the first layer and I'm just adding my footballs to it. So let's change the color to blue. So now, since I kept that back layer behind it, sometimes you can see these patterns a little bit easier and the design looks a little bit better this way. So Sometimes I just leave a background behind it. Now, from here, if you want to make it so you can layer, any type of glitter or vinyl, we can add like a knockout. So if I add a place and fill, one island to the outside, you'll see that island come around the blue. I'll hold shift and subtract that out. So now all those white spaces will actually be where my shirt shows through, and I could use glitter vinyl or any type of vinyl through here for my design. So sometimes I personally think adding like an outline behind these help it look better sometimes. But again, it's all preference. So whatever you think looks better, you can go ahead and use that. But I think it just kind of it defines that heart, and just you can see the objects a little bit better. All right, so now we'll kind of go through some of the wizard tricks and stuff like that. So let's open up wizard here. So on the edit tab, we kind of went over the aligning already and the guides. So those are there for us. We also have our nudge and copy. So copy is really nice because if we're working with a design, say, maybe we're working with something patriotic and we wanted some hearts or some stars, these copies right here, instead of me trying to keep these perfectly in line and being like, okay, is that space the same as that space? Is it a little bit off? What I can do is use my copy selected, and then I can just hit to the right. So right now it's set at 0.02 spacing. So if I go to the right, they're all going to be exactly 0.02 spacing away. If that's too close together, I can just increase that spacing. And now you'll see the spacing is just increased a little bit more. So if I want to go down, I can hit down. If I want to go up, I can go back up, left or right, and then the spacing will be right there. So just really easy. Sometimes, you'll sit there and try to put 3 things in a row, and you're just kind of wondering if the spacing is right and stuff like that. Well, this copy right here, copy selected, will just help you with all that and make sure it's perfect. Now, we have a few tools here as well. So the fill between is nice. If we're ever working with stones or anything it's mostly going to work best with stones, but sometimes you can use it with other objects as well. So let's have our stars here. If I hold shift and select my star and hit fill between, it's just going to generate that shape of whatever we have selected and fill it between those two objects. So it filled 6 stars. We see it overlapping just a little bit. So to get rid of that, I can go to my -1 and it'll go down to 5 stars. Okay, I just wanted 4 though. Okay, I go down 1 more and now I have 4. And the thing is, it keeps it lined up perfect. So the spacing between each star is all the same. So maybe you wanted a lot more. It's obviously going to overlap, but you can do that. If you just wanted 3, we could go down to 3 and so on. So this fill between, it's great for stones. If you're working with a type, maybe some text or something like that. So if you're working with stones, we got an SS10 right here. Just drop an SS10. Sorry, having a little trouble opening right now. Let me go ahead and shut down Corel real quick, and I'll go ahead and open it back up. Sorry about that, guys. Just give me 1 second. We'll have that back up. So, like we said earlier, when we were working with our Corel, it can crash. Now, if it does, Corel has found an auto backup. So, because we saved that at 5, it's going to save a lot more backups. I don't need to open any of them, so I'm just going to click cancel. But if you were working on something and it crashed and it gives you this auto backup, hit yes, and it will open up the project you were working on. If you just hit cancel, it will eventually go to the main screen. So we'll just hit OK. And let's see if we can open this now. Perfect. All right. So again, with the fill between two, I can have 2 stones, and I just dropped them just like that. So it's a little bit hard to see, but we got 1 here and then 1 here. So if I just select both of those stones and hit fill between, it will give me a perfect line of stones between that area. So again, it's on a path right now, so all these are kind of selected as 1. So if I go up or down, I can add or take away stones. So I'm hitting down on the arrow a lot, and you can see the spacing between those stones getting larger because it's taking the stones out. So this up and down arrow will allow you to add or subtract stones or objects from whatever you just created. Ready. So up at the top of our wizard right here, we have a few buttons that kind of go unnoticed for. So what they are here, we have this black box here that gives us a weed border, but it also gives us a background for our design. And then over here we have sides the page to the design. So right here we have our page in Corel. If we want to make that, maybe we have our design, and I'll just draw a big star. So if we have a big star that's obviously a lot bigger than our page and we want to send it to the cutter, but we have to make sure that it's in our page before we send it. If I just hit this white little page right here at the top right, it will size my page in Corel to fit that design. So now let's just say I had this star, but you know what, I wanted to show my customer or just have a quick mock-up on a background. If I hit this black box here, it will just add a weed box or a background right to our design. So you can use this as a weed box. So if I send this to the cutter now, it's a perfectly lined up weed box. If I just want to use it as a background, so I can, maybe you're using, you have white in your design or light color, and you just kind of want to see what it's going to look like, you can always throw a black background on it. And once you create this background, you can change it to any color you want. So if you decide that, hey, this looks, I'm going to have a red shirt behind this, let's see how this looks on a red shirt. Well, now I can change it to red, or maybe it's going to be green. I can see it on a green shirt, and so on. So those will help, one, either adding a quick weed box or just kind of helping you see your design a little bit better or on the apparel color. And the last thing up here, we have just a little add length and height. So sometimes you might be sending your customer a few different designs and you want to kind of tell them what size the design is going to be for each one. This little up and down arrow will just give you the height and width of your design. So just by clicking that, it will say 19.6 inches tall by 20.6 inches wide. So now they have the dimensions, there's no questions. And then you have that for them. So in case like, hey, they get the shirt and they're like, I thought this was only going to be 15 inches wide. Well, when we send you the mock-up or the design, we showed you it was only going to be 19 by 20. So you kind of have that to go off of too. So Next thing we'll show you is our templates tab. Now, has anyone used or is anyone familiar with the template tab already? Alright, so with our designs, or when you're creating a design and you're ready to send it to the cutter, that's when we're going to create our templates. Now, depending on what type of template we're creating, you can see that we have a rhinestone, a vinyl, and a multi-decoration. Underneath that is the bonus cut. So the bonus cuts are only going to be used if we already have templates created. So if you purchase a design from us, let me go ahead and try to open up one of those real quick. So we have our design here. Just going to bring it in. So we'll go to curves. Yeah, someone asked if they had a file and it tells them there's no preview available. I'm not sure. Is it like when you have a file like in here, it's not showing you a preview? Or is it showing somewhere, saying that somewhere else? Sometimes if it's like in a EPS format or SVG, you're not going to actually get to see like what it looks like before. With our new live templates, we actually save these ones as CDRs. So with those, you can actually see the image beforehand. So like that, you'll actually see all these before you open them. If they're saved as an EPS or SVG, it's probably just going to show you the file type that it's going to open to. So this one has the Corel icon. So that's just pretty much saying that any EPS or SVG file will open into Corel. So if you purchase a rhinestone design from us, or maybe from other companies, we always separate our templates for you. So this is just a basic TRW magic separator. If I take this design here and click this button right here, it's going to give us the exact same templates. So if you already have a template already created, something with these yellow boxes or any color box behind it, that's when we can use our bonus cut options. So if we wanted to add a stone 2 plus cut or a stone overcut, now we can add these just to those templates. We obviously don't want to use any vinyl options on the stones and vice versa. Now if we just have a design like here, say we didn't have these templates that came in with it, now we can actually use our rhinestone templates. So if I know that I need a stone 2 plus cut, I can just hit that once, and now it's going to give me my templates in a stone 2 plus cut format. So you will see actually two backgrounds behind each one of those boxes. So with our vinyl vectors, say this is all one design, and we wanted to separate these ones as well. Well, I can use my vinyl overcut, my vinyl double cut, or my TRW magic separator. So any one of those options, let me open up a new page real quick. Any one of these options will give you, you can use with the vinyl. So not all the vinyl has to be a double or overcut. Sometimes with a thicker material like glitter, you'll want to use those features instead. But the vinyl's nice because it's going to take each piece and just put a weed box around that piece. So with our rhinestones, no matter what, those boxes are going to be the same size. Even if I add one color or one stone and we'll make it gold, if I just add one extra stone in there, just that one gold piece is going to have its own box, and it's all going to be the same size, because when they layer, Alright, someone asked what the Stone 2 Plus cut is. A Stone 2 Plus cut, so when you're working with our Magic Flock, it's a thicker material, so you'll want to have 2 rotations when it cuts it. So our Stone 2 Plus cut, what that does is it goes around each, so if we have a circle here, what it does is it goes around each cut twice before lifting up. Now if you only have the regular Magic separator, it's just going to go around one of these cut once, and then go to the next one, and then so on. With your cutter, most cutters you can set it up so even if you don't have the wizard, you can go around 2 rotations. But what that will do is go around each stone once, and then when it finishes the first round, it goes back and starts the second round. However, with our 2 Plus cut, it allows it to go around twice before lifting up, and it gives it just a little bit more of an accurate cut. So anything with stones, you'll most likely use a Stone 2 Plus cut. With different type of vinyls, you'll use vinyl overcut and double. And on our page, let me pull this up for us real quick. Under support resources, you'll see documentation and FAQs. So when you go here, it will say cutter specs and recommended cut settings. So if you guys don't have this downloaded, I recommend downloading this to your computer, so even if you're not connected to your internet, you'll always have this to go by. So it's just a little book, and all the cutters and materials we have are going to be in here. So all you have to do is find your cutter. So let's say we're working on the Graphtec 6000. Well, now it tells us the material, Magic Flock, and you'll see double cut. So it's telling us we need to put that in a double cut. Now, Caesar Glitter Holographic, same thing. We need a double cut. Over here is just this regular single cut. So if you see single cut, that means you can just hit the Magic separator, and that gives us a single cut. If you see double cut in any of these areas, that's when you're going to have to use either the Stone 2 Plus cut or the vinyl double cut. And then you'll see the settings for your cutter. So if we have a different one, you'll see it'll tell you the blade, single cut, double cut. So you'll see on the Jaguar we have settings for a single cut. So if you don't want to make it a double, you can still use it, but the pressure is going to be a lot higher than what you would use just for a double cut. So sometimes you can use both. Sometimes you'll just need to use a double, and sometimes you'll just need to use a single. And as you start cutting your materials, you'll get those settings down. It'll become like a lot easier to kind of figure that stuff out. So with our templates, they don't just create just templates. With vinyl, anything heat transferred, we need to mirror our design. So let's pick an object that we can probably actually tell is being mirrored. So let's just turn it a little bit that way, and maybe turn this a little that way too. So if we have our design here, when I hover over these Magic separators or any one of these objects, you'll see down here it'll tell you what other options you have. So if I right click, it will mirror my design. Let me go back one, and let me bring it to, oh, that's why. Alright, so let's go back and right click. Oh, I didn't shift this yet. So let's move this that way. Move this way. So let's try this again. So now you can see that that just mirrored my design for me, and it created the template. So now, since this is heat transfer vinyl, I can send this to my cutter, and it's already mirrored and ready to cut for me. If we're using, say we wanted this design, but we wanted a decal, we can add registration mark. So same thing, I'll hover over, see at the bottom, shift click adds registration mark. So now I can highlight my design, hold shift, click TRW Magic separator, and now it adds registration marks to make it really easy to line up my decal. All right, so does anyone have any questions about the templates? Let's go through real quick. I think I covered most of it down here. So again, yeah, the bonus cuts. So this black box right here is just that green box. So it doesn't, when it creates these templates, it's not gonna like make the colors. It's just gonna make all the objects inside it black. So this box before, if we want this actually part of our design, that's why it's showing up like that. If we didn't have that box behind it anymore, when we created these templates, it wouldn't do that. But since it's there, it's going to read it as part of our design. I just pretty much kept it there just so we could see how it will separate each color when we hit this template. So it doesn't matter how many colors we had, it will separate each one of those templates for us by color. Yeah, so right now if I sent this to the cutter, all it would do was I would have to load each color separately. This would just be, yeah, one solid box, and then the second color would be the star. So let me make a different design. Maybe it'll help see a little bit better. So let's just say we had a star, and then we maybe had a star behind it. That was a second color. So with these two designs, if I use my separator, it will separate each one of those designs for me. And the registration is here. So if you highlight over it, you'll see down here at the bottom of my wizard, if you highlight it over any object or any button on the wizard down here in this little area, you'll see what it does. So when I hover over TRW Magic Separator, you'll see shift click adds registration marks. So all you have to do is just highlight your object, hold shift, left click, and then that separates it for you. All right, so if I do the same thing and right click, it's going to mirror and give me registration marks. Registration marks are just pretty much for decals because it helps line up, and we have a few videos showing you how to kind of use the registration marks. It's not going to really work with vinyl because you'd have to press those squares into like whatever shirt you're using, and it's going to be very difficult. So and then you'll have to kind of use a remover to take them off. So I would just stick with the registration just for the decals. So do you guys have any other questions about the wizard or anything I've showed you so far? Do you need to see anything again? Alrighty. Well, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Definitely check out today. We have 2 more webinars scheduled for today. I believe Matt starts at 1, and then Lisa has another one at 4. So if you guys aren't busy, definitely check those out today. We got a lot going on here. If you guys have any more questions about any of these basic commands or anything like that, don't hesitate to shoot us an email at info@therhinestoneworld.com or give us a call at 941-755-1696. Again, this was Sean. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and hopefully see you in the webinars later today.